Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back into the Pressing On podcast. This is episode number 5, and I'm privileged and honored to have my friend Korbin Diggs here with us
Mhm.
today. And I'm very, very excited as she shares her journey of perseverance with her family through their numerous diagnoses and hospitalizations. It's going to be an encouraging podcast as we hear Korbin Diggs' story today. Just want to remind our listeners that the goal of the Pressing On podcast is to amplify voices of perseverance and highlight the journey of hospitalized families so that everyone who listens will be encouraged to press on through tough times holistically. Korbin, welcome into the Pressing On podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today, Richie.
Korbin currently serves as the administrative director at Reclamation Church and is a former marketing and training director at Chick-fil-A. As I mentioned, she's a dear friend of the Reeder family, and Korbin is a model of perseverance, having experienced not one, but both of her children being diagnosed with lymphoma. She's graciously walked the isolating road of caring for her children in and out of the hospital during diagnosis, chemo, radiation, and remission, all while working in a full-time ministry role right here in our Monroeville community. Korbin has a bachelor's degree from Liberty University and has now lived in Pittsburgh for 34 years. She's been
Mm.
married to her husband, Reno, for 26 years, good friend of mine and a car guy. They have 3 children, Evan, Ross, and Gillian. Korbin's worn multiple hats volunteering within the Monroeville community over the years and is an avid fan of her Pittsburgh Steelers. Did we get everything there, Korbin?
You did. You got the important things.
Awesome. I believe that I still have a Pittsburgh Steelers bobblehead in my collection thanks to you. So thank you for that.
Yes. You're welcome. You're welcome. Anything I can do to promote that black and gold.
I love it. I love it. Korbin is an enthusiastic leader right here in our community, and she has a very unique healthcare story to tell. And so, Korbin, I
Mhm.
just want to begin with giving our listening audience a bit of details about you and your upbringing, getting to know you personally like our family does. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how your family of origin affected you today.
Well, I grew up in the state of North Carolina in a tiny little town called Eden, which if you run your 2 fingers across the top of the state of North Carolina and bring them together, there's a tiny little city right there that has one stoplight. And it's right on the Virginia line, just 5 miles inside the state of North Carolina, where I grew up at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And
Oh, yeah.
grew up in a family with 2 parents, mom and dad, Curtis and Martha. And my brother Curtis, who is like a year and a half younger than me, but thinks he's older than me. But so we grew up in a small community, and truthfully, I didn't know what I had when I was growing up. I grew up a couple of blocks from my grandparents and lived in a community of about 200 homes, which were
Hmm.
basically the community that my parents were both reared in that community. So
Wow.
we grew up with a lot of cousins. We went to school with our cousins. Our parents went to a small schoolhouse within that community when they went to school. So just a small town with a lot of family. My mom's one of 6, and my dad is also one of 6. So a lot of family locally nearby, and so North Carolina was a fun place to grow up in a really great time of generational just richness in grandparents, and it was awesome.
I
Yep.
think one of the things that I've learned about you is, that um, not only morals, but your faith in God was instilled in you at an early age, that they instilled hardworking values, and you were an athlete too, right?
So I played every sport that I could um, going through school, and the only reason I played basketball, volleyball, and ran track. I did not play softball. Sorry, Richie. Didn't
Oh,
play
that's all right.
softball because it was the same time as track season, so I had to pick
Gotcha.
one. So yeah, so I did sports. My mother was a basketball player in high school. My dad was an athlete as well, and my brother. So yes, very sports oriented. We love watching college basketball, go Tar Heels, and so very much involved in sports. But also, yes, as you mentioned, yeah, faith was a huge part, of our upbringing and in our family, and just grateful to God for um, all the things that He taught us, through our parents and through just a really great small local church, about God's faithfulness to us, and how He wanted to make us part of His family, and how we could be agents for His glory in this world.
Hmm. That's so important, for all of us to look back at our childhood. And, there's so many studies out now that show how our family of origin affects us. And a lot of them get into, our ticks and our quirks and maybe the things that weren't so great. But if we truly look back on our childhood, like you just shared, like there's so many blessings too that have made us into the men and women that we are today. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think as long as our family's known you, you've always been really, really involved in the community right here in Monroeville. Not only did we work together, but we saw you serve at Chick-fil-A and at Evergreen Elementary School. And I feel like
Yeah.
you've had your thumbprint, your footprint in our community here for a while. And I'm curious, like, was that a specific decision that you made early on in living in the area here to get involved in the community and to be of service to others?
No, it was a decision that was our parents. Like, our parents were very service oriented in our community when we were growing up, so they were very much involved. So through watching them um, serve, when there were missionaries that came, they stayed at our house, to our church, and our parents were just involved, very much involved in our community. But also, when I went to Liberty College, a Christian, it was called Christian Service at that time, and every semester you had one, so you got
Hmm.
to choose it. Like, you went through a course where they taught you about what Christian Service was, but then after that, every semester you chose a Christian service um,
Mm.
to participate in. So, I mean, just having it modeled at home, with my parents, and then to have that reinforced in college at Liberty was huge. You had so many options and opportunities to serve. You got to
Sure.
discover what your areas of giftedness were and what they weren't. You'd serve in
Yeah.
some areas and it was like, yeah, no, God's not calling me to this one, but yeah, I do
Hmm.
really love this over here. So, just a really great opportunity to try a bunch of different service opportunities. And then after that, like, whenever I moved to a new community, that was the first thing I looked for, was a really good church. And then after that, an opportunity to see where they were serving and to become a part of that. So, with that being the case, it just has kind of become a part of the fiber that makes up our family.
Yeah. I love that, because it just all over time, it just became part of who you were. That, hey, if I'm going to live a meaningful and intentional life, I'm going to serve those around me and I'm going to serve the community. I've always loved and admired that about you. You know, One thing that I want to remind our listeners about is that our podcast sponsor for season one is sponsored by the Children's Organ Transplant Association. CODA helps children and young adults who need a life-saving transplant by providing fundraising assistance and family support. They're the trusted leader in supporting transplant families financially for a lifetime. CODA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so funds raised to help meet transplant expenses are not considered income for families. CODA's services and guidance are provided at no charge to transplant families, many of whom we also serve through Pressing On programs. And 100% of each contribution made to CODA in honor of patients helps meet transplant-related expenses. So for more information on how CODA might financially assist your family if you're on the transplant journey, head to coda.org. That's COTA.org. You're listening to the Pressing On podcast, episode 5 with Korbin Diggs. Back to your story, Korbin. I know that you have a very unique story of perseverance that we'd like to get into with your daughter, Gillian, and also your son, Ross, that we want to highlight here today. So, would you be willing to take a few moments to kind of peel back the curtain on the situation, the timing, the onset, the lymphoma diagnosis that we mentioned, their hospitalizations, and then also how things sit with them today? Take us a little bit into your story.
Okay. I guess our story begins with our daughter Gillian, and Gillian had just Finished college. I'm sorry, not college. Finished high school. Jill had just graduated from high school in May of 2019. And
Mm-hmm.
she had a great summer and done a lot of fun things that she enjoyed, and um, had taken her to a doctor's appointment. And they just thought she was fighting something. And then we got her ready for college, and she went to her first day of classes. And right after that, because she wasn't feeling the greatest then, so we took her to a doctor's appointment immediately after that first day of college. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, by the end of that day, we were we found ourselves at Children's Hospital. My very introverted daughter, who does not like to be touched, had been touched all over.
Mm-hmm.
Just with various tests being run, and I just remember we had a um, oncology fellow that had come into the room and said, we believe that your daughter has lymphoma. And
Mm-hmm.
my daughter just started to sob, and I was stunned and angry at the same time. I was stunned, I was angry. I was like, how in the world do you tell a kid that you think they have lymphoma when you're not sure, about it? And they had run the test. I mean, truthfully, looking back at it now, the fellow was very
Mm-hmm.
sure that we had it, but they just can't say it until they've had a doctor to confirm it, and giving you a little time to sit with it.
Mm-hmm.
But we were stunned, and we just wanted to go home, and
Mm-hmm.
they were going to do a biopsy, and they could not get that biopsy scheduled because it was like Labor Day weekend. So they couldn't get
Mm-hmm.
anything scheduled until, so we went home for a few days. So that gave us opportunity to just sit with it for a few days, which you need that. I've
Mm-hmm.
learned that, but I didn't know it then. But we had a few days to sit with it, and we went immediately back to Children's. They did the biopsy. They confirmed the diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma, and we started the journey of chemotherapy.
Maybe speak to a hospitalized family right now that has, forthcoming news about a possible diagnosis. Like you mentioned, how you need some time to just sit with it, and that you recognize that now, but maybe not at the time. Could you speak to a family that might be in a situation like that right now?
Sure. I know you're overwhelmed with everything. I know you're stunned and shocked, and in a few days of nothing happening, when you really want to rush in and get everything taken care of with your kid as soon as possible, you need a few days for your mind to start processing what it is that you're going to be walking through. You have no idea what you're going to be walking
Hmm.
through, but you need a few days to just kind of to sit with it, to get used to the thought of, we're going to be spending a lot of time at the hospital. What does that mean for our family? What do I
Mm-hmm.
need to take to the hospital for my kid? You need a notepad and a pen. You need a warm, fuzzy blanket for your kid. You need some snacks for yourself, because please don't stop eating. You need to be able to
Mm-hmm.
eat because you need to be strong for your kid, so that you can focus. Your child is not going to be able to focus on what all is going on. I don't know what their ages are. They could be from a small child to a teenager to a young adult, and
Mm-hmm.
they will be concentrating on fighting the disease. So all the details are your responsibility. So please do everything that you can to take care of your own health when it comes to eating and staying hydrated, and asking questions. Like, if you don't understand what the
Mm-hmm.
doctor is saying, say to them, I'm confused. I don't understand. And when you
Mm-hmm.
say that, that raises a red flag for the doctors and nurses. They are going to slow down. They are going to repeat. They're going to make sure that you understand what it is that they're saying. They're going to give you a daily plan of everything that they've talked to you about on that day. There's just so many things that you will learn as you
Mm-hmm.
walk through it. But please take a deep breath. When you need to walk out of the room, your child will be safe while you're out of the room. Go outside, get a breath of fresh air, and then go back in.
Mm.
Those are
That's
just
such a
some
good word.
small things. There's small things that are extremely helpful.
Yeah, such a good word. I feel like you were plugging the Pressing On Care Package program right there without even saying it, with all the things that we put in there with sleep aids and healthy snacks and a warm, cuddly blanket and all that kind of stuff. I think that we learned in those early days, like the most important things, so for a family that's listening right now, that just got a unique diagnosis, heed Corbin's words of just taking a few days to breathe and comprehend. But definitely go on our website at pressingon.org and fill out the form so that you can receive your free Pressing On hospital care package, because we'd love to provide you all of those things as you enter into the hospital. Lots of free resources there at pressingon.org. Korbin, I'm curious, even though I know personally, share a little bit with our listeners what that looked like for, Jill's hospitalizations and her care and her treatment going forward.
Let me just say one thing about the care package that we received when we were in the hospital, because she was, for her first cycle of chemotherapy, they did that in the hospital. So we were in hospital for about a week. And as much as you try, you are not going to be able, especially when you're starting out the first time or the first visit, you're going to forget things. And when I opened up that care package, and there was snacks in there. There was like Propel drink for to put in your water. There were meal vouchers. There were so many. There was like head covers for your head to wash so that your hair doesn't get wet when you take a quick shower. Or there were just so many things in there that we didn't know we needed, that we needed. So I just wanted to say, please do fill out that paperwork for that care package, because it will bless your life with all the things that you don't think that you need. So, but anyhow, so we met a lot of oncology nurses, and shout out to the Children's Hospital oncology nurses. I
Love it.
love them. Love them. They
Mm-hmm.
were awesome. They are experts at what they do. They really do love your kids. Please be kind to them, because they are taking care of your kiddos, and they carry some of that home with them. Like, they don't just care for your kids and go home and they don't think about it again. Unfortunately, it's just part of the trade and part of the occupation that they've chosen, is to care
Mm-hmm.
for sick children and families. So, please be kind to them. Another just encouragement, when we went to see, and it's not something that you have to do, but we took a little basket of things to the nurses, just to let them know that we appreciated them and we
I
appreciated
remember
what
when you
they
did
were
that.
doing
Yeah.
for our kids. Like, we did
Mm-hmm.
that routinely. And we just wanted them to know that we were extremely grateful for their care, for our kiddos.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not something that you have to do, but just a simple thank you
Yeah.
goes a long way. They know that you're stressed out, and they know that you're
Mm-hmm.
frustrated, and they know that you're not really mad at them, but you know they're not made of armor either. So, they have
Mm-hmm.
feelings, and so just be gracious and kind to the nurses. But they do such a great job, and they are wise. They can answer a lot of questions that you have. So ask them. They're never
Mm-hmm.
too busy. They are busy, but they're never too busy to take a moment to answer your questions in regards to your kids' health. So
I definitely 100% agree with you, because I feel like the down days that I've spent personally in the hospital, one of the things in addition to prayer that pulls me out of that is gratitude. And there's been days that I've just journaled and kind of wrote down, like, here's just 5 things that I'm thankful for today. And even if your child's sleeping and laying there in bed, like, to take the focus off of yourself and put it on someone else can really change your mindset for sure. Just walking out in the hallway and saying, hey, I know maybe you don't get thanked a whole lot, but I just want to say thanks for everything that you're doing for my child today. Taking that focus and turning it on somebody else with appreciation and gratitude makes a big difference. I'm with you, sister.
yes, it does. So we spent a lot of time, in the hospital and in the transfusion room, and we will go home for a little bits of time in between, treatments, and then back in the hospital. And the PTSD that you feel when you drive toward Children's is a real thing, and you're going to feel it for a very long time. So give yourself some grace. We played some some really play music that blesses your life. Whether that's gospel music or, if it's Christian music or whatever, if it's jazz or if there's some other type of music that you enjoy, play that, while you're going back and forth. But you know, I found K-Love really encouraging for me. Not everybody loves K-Love, but I did because it seemed like the same songs were playing that kind of washed over us and kind of prepared me for the journey. Because when you leave your house, I don't know if you're like me, but my mindset was, ugh, I don't want to go to the hospital. I just want my kids to be
Mm-hmm.
okay. I don't want to go to
Mm-hmm.
Children's. But by the time I got to Children's, I was very thankful that we had Children's to go to that had excellent medical doctors and excellent nurses and excellent treatment and excellent consideration for my child. For my
Mm-hmm.
child to be able to go into that hospital, into an environment that's beautiful and well thought out for the needs of our children, wagons for little kids. I mean, they just had so many things. They were super intentional about caring for my sick kid. So
Yeah.
I was blessed by that. But, do the things that will feed your soul because you need to be as healthy as you can be to support your
Mm-hmm.
children well. So,
It
so we did
it
that.
sounds like what I hear you saying is that you definitely want to serve your child and appreciate the staff, but that it's also important to take care of yourself as a parent.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. As a parent, you need energy. I needed prayer. So, I had people to come in and, pray for us. And, I believe that God went before us as we walked into the hospital. There are a lot of people there that love God just like you do, or that know about him if you don't,
Mm-hmm.
that understand, what it is that you're walking through and that you need encouragement. And, we found that there. Um, we found that the Lord went before us, in everything that
Mm-hmm.
we walked through. We never walked through it alone. He was always with us. And that's what God promises. He promises to never leave you or forsake you. So he was always
Mm.
with us and we felt his presence. We saw him in various, people that we encountered in the hospital, just them showing love and care for us. So we
Mm.
were blessed and encouraged by that as we walked each day, as we put one foot in front of the other. When your feet feel like lead, you can barely put one foot in front of the other. We found encouragement, through God's word, through music, through other people who encouraged us, through friends who came to visit us. And, but, be honest with your friends. Be honest with your friends
Mm.
that some days you're going to be tired and you don't feel like having a visitor. You need to be real and just be honest and say, you know what? Thank you so much for coming, but right now we just can't come down. We really need to stay with our child and don't feel guilty
Yep.
about it. There is nothing wrong with
100%.
that. They want to support you well. And sometimes supporting you well means just dropping something off, not necessarily getting to see you or pull on
Yep.
you, but it
Mm-hmm.
means just them being willing to drop something off and go back home and continue to pray for you and continue to support you in your journey. So don't
Mm.
feel bad for protecting your sanity and protecting your child and your journey. So
Mm-hmm.
we continued on that journey with Gillian. Gillian
And
completed her
Korbin, give
chemotherapy.
everyone a feel for what that timeline looked like from diagnosis through the whole way for treatment. Like, what share the years and the number of months, and what did that look like for Jill?
Okay, so for Jillian, it was the end of August 2019 when she started with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she completed her five cycles of chemotherapy um, in December. In the mid December, she was completed with all of her chemo,
Mm-hmm.
and then on January the 28th, she started radiation and she did radiation and she finished radiation on February the 14th on Valentine's Day of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Jill is now 2024. Jill has been cancer free for 4 years. Praise God. She is doing well. She is a
Love
straight
it. Love it.
A. She's a straight A student at a local community college, and she is just taking it at her own pace. She is doing well with that. And so we are blessed with her progress. But please understand that when you complete your treatment, you are not done. When you complete your treatment, there are follow-ups every 3 months, then it's every 6 months, then it's, once a year. So there is still, I know a lot of people think that, once my child is cancer free, y'all are done. You can move on to the next phases of your life. And that's true in some
Hmm.
ways. But in a lot of
But home
ways,
doesn't equal healed.
it does not. So you're still going back for follow-up visits and um, to make sure that your child's health is still in good standing. So,
Hmm.
for us, that was Jill's journey, and we can still continue to go back to Children's for her routine and regular follow-ups. I was trying to figure out exactly when, because I feel like there was so much going on in between Jill's completion of treatment and when her brother, who is 16 months older than her, discovered a lump in his neck. And because because his sister had had cancer, he was very sensitive to making sure he checked on himself.
Mm.
So he went and checked on himself, and they said, you have Hodgkin's as well. Like, so that the lump meant cancer again for our family. And just so you can get a picture, right at that time, my husband had had back surgery. My mother was walking through dementia, and my dad was ill, and he was taking care of my mother in North
Mm.
Carolina. And overarching all of this was COVID. So you
Hmm.
couldn't go in to see people. You had to wear a mask, and so there was a whole lot going on. I think that's sometimes why I can't remember all the, you know, exactly when everything started for Ross, because there was so much other stuff
Hmm.
happening in our family at that time. And
So
so, but
let's pause for a second and take a deep breath so that our listeners can fully comprehend everything that you just said, because you mentioned so many weighty things at once. Your daughter has just persevered through treatment and is still, going back for repeated appointments.
correct,
And your mother is going through dementia and many different end of life issues. Your husband is having back surgery, and then on top of all of those life altering things, boom, 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 your son is diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. If you
correct.
can, for our listeners right now, I mean, like, even though we were with you guys in many of those situations, like, the heaviness of it all just hits again. Like you mentioned, the PTSD. Like, what did that feel like emotionally for you in that moment when he was diagnosed?
It's devastating.
Hmm.
You cannot believe that you are going to walk through it again. Um, you're stunned. Um, you want to go and be a part of taking care of your mom, but there's COVID. They're saying at that point, it was like very early, and they were saying stay away from your older seniors. And we had just walked through cancer with Jill, and so her immune was still compromised. Like, it wasn't like she could
Sure.
be out and about. She had to kind of sit back and continue to recover. But you're stunned. But let me just say this: I was stunned, but I reached out to a friend, to kind of talk it through. And I said, I really would like Ross to go to Children's, but I don't know. He's older. Like, I don't know if she's like, call. Because your brain sometimes doesn't even process that. Make a phone call, to see if,
Mm-hmm.
there's somewhere else he can go. But if he can go back to the same doctors that Jill had, then that would be awesome. So we call, and they say we take him up to age 26. So he fell
Wow.
well with under that. So while it was brand new for him, I mean, I remember Gillian sobbing when she found out that her brother was going to go through the
Mm-hmm.
same thing she had just been through. And their older sister came in from Philadelphia, to be with family. And um, just for us, we just kind of all collapsed into each other. When I said,
Mm-hmm.
you need a few days, well, by that point, we understood that. And we took those few days with Ross because we needed those few days to wrap our heads around what was the most immediate. You can't process it
Mm-hmm.
all. I mean, we're still processing it's years later,
Right.
but you can't process it all. So you have to deal with what's the most immediate. So we stepped back, we took a moment, we took a breath, we prayed about it. We got, just peace and clarity from the Lord that He would be with us, even though we were walking through something that we never had any inkling that we would walk through more than once.
Mm-hmm.
So, in going back to children's, I had familiarity with the nurses, the doctors. They were all familiar to me. They were not familiar to
Sure.
Ross.
Mm-hmm.
So they recognized that while I knew a lot of what they were doing and what that course of treatment could potentially look like and what the steps would look like,
Mm-hmm.
he had no idea. He had no idea. So
Sure.
what they did was they talked him through everything as if he was which he was, a brand new
Yeah.
patient, brand new family, but we weren't a brand new family to them. They were familiar with our family because, like I reminded you, Jill is still going back for follow-ups. So they're still seeing us. So we're doing diagnosis for Ross, follow-up treatments for Jill. Follow-up visits for Jill post-cancer. So we are literally trying to keep appointments straight.
Sure.
We're going to take Jill. So my husband was taking one
Which
for
kid
something
is this
while,
appointment for?
yes, that notebook I told you about. We started
Mm-hmm.
a brand new notebook for Ross. Had a notebook over here for Jill. And one thing I wanted to say to you as well, take pictures with your phone. It might be difficult for you to think about what you could ever need those photos for, but it will become a time log. I was
Mm.
looking for things concerning Ross today. I scrolled back through my phone. There was
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis there, all the visits that you're going to have, so many hospital visits,
Mm-hmm.
so many hospital stays. But log them in your journal, but take photos so that you can keep up with that timeline of what actually happened and what took place. It will be extremely helpful to you further down the line when you've gotten past it and your kids are doing fantastic. There will be opportunities like this one where
Right.
someone will want to hear your story
Mm-hmm.
and you will be able to scroll back, and it will be PTSD. I'm telling you right now, to scroll back, it will be traumatic for you,
I hear you.
but
I hear you.
but still you will be able to put that timeline together much easier if you have these photos in your phone and this
Mm-hmm.
journal that has, you don't have to write in that journal every day, but
Mm-hmm.
just write in it routinely so you can keep up with things. Write down what the doctor says about medications that your children are taking, because sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes they
Yeah.
make a mistake and they say, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
this is the dosage. And you're like, no, this is not the dosage.
You mentioned the timeline. Let our listeners know how Ross is doing today and what his timeline looked like as far as, the length of treatment.
So Ross was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 2. So his treatment was a little different from his sisters, but they
Mm-hmm.
did have that in common. He started his treatment his diagnosis was in November of 21.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when everything started for him. He had 5 rounds of chemo, just like his sister did. Different drugs. Some of the drugs were different. Some of the impact, even though they're
Mm-hmm.
siblings, the impact of the chemo is different for each person. So with
Interesting.
Ross had a lot of anticipatory nausea when he got toward the end of his treatment, end of his
Mm-hmm.
chemo. And what that is your body, your mind can say, I am totally fine. I'm good with getting my chemo today. But your body can say, oh no, here it comes. It's
Hmm.
been, it's been a few weeks since we've had this. This is the routine. We know it's coming. And your body anticipates what's coming and causes nausea. thus causing
Interesting.
throw up and whatever else. So anticipatory nausea was huge for Ross. He had a lot more anti-nausea drugs than Jill did because the way his body responded to the chemo. So
Yeah.
just knowing that every individual is different.
Mm-hmm.
And
What
so
is something about Hodgkin's lymphoma that you think maybe the general public doesn't understand? Whether it's, the effects or the treatment, or is there something that comes to mind? There's just a question out of my curiosity, what is something that, maybe typical people just don't understand about Hodgkin's lymphoma?
that is one of the most curable cancers, which is a good thing. Hodgkin's is one of the most curable cancers that you can have.
Hmm.
There's been a lot of good research done on Hodgkin's. That's a good thing. A lot of times you're thinking about walking through cancer and what are the bad things that can happen,
Right.
but to know that it's one of the most curable cancers that you can have doesn't guarantee you that you will never get cancer again. You
Sure.
could certainly That could certainly happen, and that's something that's always in the back of your mind once you've been a cancer patient, is that you can have a reoccurrence of a different type of cancer. So they watch for it's early mammograms and just early testing that they will do because they know that that potential
Hmm.
is there for um, onset of a different type of cancer or a different disease. So
Yeah.
as is true with many other cancers, I mean, you're learning day after day, new things about it.
Mm-hmm.
But Ross is, he did have chemo, like I said, the same 5 cycles like Gillian did, not the same drugs, but the same 5 cycles. Then he had radiation because that ups the chance of non-reoccurrence, is to have that radiation after. And radiation, they've made, I mean, I know it's not for everyone, and you have to make the decision yourself, but it does
Yeah.
up the chances of non-reoccurrence. So
Mm-hmm.
Ross had radiation, and um, he was done by the spring. So they're both been cancer free since that point. But Ross is 2 years behind Gillian, so he is still like
Sure.
every 6 months going in for checks, and
Mm-hmm.
they've both been well. But what surprised me about um, how God made our body
Hmm.
is that when your body is recovering from cancer, there are marked changes that you can notice. Like I think the first thing that I noticed with their skin started to brighten, just like the regeneration of just like health in their bodies. There's a lot of black fingernails and black toenails after you've had chemotherapy. So, those grow out over time. So your body continues to heal itself,
Mm.
but it's not only the body that needs healing, the mind and the spirit needs healing. So, I mean, they both had some really good friends that were able to be around them, speak into their lives. But there is counseling available for you if you
Mm.
need counseling post cancer, not only for your child, but for you, parent, as well. You need some help.
Mm. That's right.
You need some folks to that will sit and listen and help you processing it. For me, let me just say, is ongoing. It is ongoing. That process hasn't stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I still, you need to check in. So counseling is a good thing. It's helpful for you. It's helpful for your
Mm-hmm.
child. It's helpful for your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. So please,
Ah, so good.
please reach out and get that help.
Yeah. Well, Korbin, you're kind of already taking the segue into the conversation around holistic health, physical, emotional, spiritual. And I got a question that I want to ask you in a second here. But real quickly, here at Pressing On, we believe in meeting tangible needs in order to meet intangible needs. And we have various programs that help do just that, to meet needs physically, emotionally, and spiritually, like Korbin was just talking about. Several of these free programs include our hospital care package program, gas card program, transplant backpack program, crisis coaching program, and also our Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh program. So if you or a family you know is affected by a long-term hospitalization or is on the journey of pediatric transplant, we'd love to come alongside of you with free resources during this time. So let me encourage you to visit our website at pressingon.org. That's pressingon.org for more information. Korbin, we're always interested in talking about holistic health here at Pressing On, and you were definitely digging into that conversation just a moment ago. That we're complex people: physical, emotional, spiritual, relational, intellectual. You shared a bit of your journey and the things that were helpful for you. But when you think of those parts of who you are, can you share maybe one part that you paid close attention to while you're in the hospital? And then maybe also with our listeners, maybe one part that you might have neglected?
So, one part that I did not pay close attention to while in hospital was take care of myself. Like, I was not good at it. I I would forego things for myself, and you forget to eat, you forget to hydrate, you forget to go to your own doctor's appointments that you should be going to while your kids are going to theirs. Like, and it's overwhelming. You feel overwhelmed. Just we had two kids, and we were trying to keep up with two different sets of appointments while working. We were both working, and we neglected, well, I neglected my husband. He had stuff, so he was going to the doctor, but I was trying to follow up with him, try to follow up with Ross and Gillian, and I neglected myself, like health wise.
Hmm.
So I would say, that would be the thing that I neglected, probably the most in our journey. And what was the second part of that question, Richie?
Well, maybe one part that you really did lean into, that was something you paid close attention regarding, those parts of who you are: physical, emotional, spiritual, relational, and intellectual. Something that was something you paid attention to during that journey.
Okay, so something that I paid attention to during that journey without a question was my walk with God, my church, and the support that I received um, from the staff that I was working with at the time. Like when I walked into the office, there were open arms waiting to just hug me and pray for me. And there was support from our whole church body. They wanted to do whatever they could that was helpful to us. And it's important to let them know what is and isn't helpful. So for my kids, they were very picky eaters. So it wasn't helpful for people to bring me meals. Bringing me
Right.
meals was not going to help me. I cook a lot myself, and I still cook through their illnesses. But they gave us
Mm-hmm.
gas cards. They gave us
Mm.
cards to Giant Eagle, or a couple of restaurant cards here or there. So DoorDash cards. So, you know, please be transparent with what your needs are. Please, there are people that want to help you in your life, but it's not helpful if the things that they're doing for you do not give you life. So if it
Mm.
does not give you life for them to cook in their kitchens and bring you food, then let them do something else. Now, if that does bring you life, listen, humble yourself, put your pride down, let them people cook for you. Because there were a couple of days that I came home from the hospital and a girlfriend of mine walked right into the house with a rotisserie chicken and some mashed potatoes and some green beans. And I was so thankful that on that day
Mm-hmm.
I did not have to think about what we're going to eat. So she was so close to me,
Mm-hmm.
she knew what we would eat. So she brought
Mm-hmm.
a rotisserie chicken, some mashed potatoes, and some green beans, and we were blessed by that. So, but really, just really good conversations, with our pastor, with our pastoral staff, with our community group leaders. I mean, there was just so much support
Mm-hmm.
for us. And you don't always have to be the ones to talk. Sometimes it's just a hug. Sometimes they just sit, with you. Um,
Mm.
but that
That's a
was
great point right
extremely
there.
helpful.
I think that you definitely hit on something important there. That one sounds like what I hear you saying is, if you're in the hospital as a family, you're not being selfish by communicating what your needs are to others, because people want to meet those needs in the way that's going to be best for you as a family. So don't hold back. Be very honest with what your needs are. But then two, like, there are those that are going to creatively serve you and just bless your heart in crazy ways that mean a lot, that it's not so much that people are giving you answers or trying to say the right things. I know for me personally, I don't necessarily remember what people said, but I remember that they were there. Does that resonate
Right.
with you as well?
Yes, it does. And a lot of times they had nothing to say. They came in, they
Right.
told us they loved us, and they sat down and they didn't say anything.
Hmm.
And that was a blessing because I didn't, there are times when you just don't have it in you to have another conversation. You've just talked to the doctors who have been in there doing rounds that morning, and you have listened to everything they have had to say, and you're trying to process, what they're saying about this loved one that you love more than anything, that's laying in that bed fighting for their lives. Um, so when loved ones come, sometimes if they just come and sit with you, then that is
Hmm.
huge. But if you're not up to it, please be honest with them and let them know, I need to take a nap. I'm not
Yeah.
up to any company right now, so I'm just going to take a nap.
I love how in your responses here, like you're sharing your story, but you're being really real. Like there's no facade with Corbin Diggs, that's for sure. And I love that about you. What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
You're a woman of God, and you are a unique model of perseverance. I'm curious because I think you have a really, really unique story here. And a lot of our listeners may not necessarily be in the hospital. They may be supporting someone that is in the hospital or taking care of their kid. Can you share just a little bit to maybe that family that, thank the Lord, they haven't experienced physical trauma with their child? What would you say to that family that they want to support their friend or their loved one or their family member that's in the hospital, but they don't quite understand like what that feels like? What would you say to them is the best way to support them?
I would say if you have friends, that they just need to know that you love them and that you're checking on them. They have a lot of responsibility when it comes to texting people. Like they have,
Copy paste, copy paste, copy paste.
hopefully they have Karen Bridge so that they do not have to do all of that. Karen Bridge is a wonderful free resource that you can let everybody know that you're on Karen Bridge, give them an update periodically, and then you don't have to do all that copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. Just send them to Karen Bridge.
Love it.
Wonderful, wonderful resource. But to that family that is saying, my friend's child is sick, I don't know what to do, drop them off a note. One of the richest blessings you can give them is to write them a handwritten note, drop something off for them, and don't see them. Drop it off, let the hospital take it up to their room. You don't need to see them. You're just trying to support them well. There may be times when you do visit, but
Hmm.
just drop it off and go back home and pray for
Hmm.
them. Pray for them. Ask God to show you what they need because He's the best one to give you direction as to what that family might specifically need. Um,
Hmm.
there's a lot of things at their homes that is not getting done. So mow their grass,
Yep.
while they're at the hospital because their grass is just growing high because that's not high on the priority list. They are just
Hmm.
putting one foot in front of the other. So mow their grass. Um, just some practical things,
No, that's great.
that you would appreciate.
Yeah, 100%. It's not your job to insert yourself into their life during their time of crisis. It's your job to bless them. And whatever that looks like, whether it's shoveling the snow, cutting the grass, dropping off a gift card so that they don't have to think about their next meal, those are all great suggestions, Corbin. We've covered a lot of ground, and there's a few closing questions that I have, but I've got a couple rapid fire questions if you're up for
All right. You
them.
don't like rapid fire, but okay. I will do it for you, Richie. I will do my best.
This humanizes you for, the people that might not
Uh,
know you personally. It just kind of
people, I'm
gives
so
them,
sorry.
uh-huh. All right. So favorite food that you like to cook at home.
Probably ribs,
Oh,
like ribs.
you bake them, you grill them, you smoke them. What do you
I
do?
I do. I bake them. I grill them. Like I try new things with them. I crock pot them. Like spicy ribs, just really sweet and unctuous ribs. Yes, ribs. Ribs is my favorite thing to cook at
Oh,
home. That's a
how
good
about
meal.
your? Oh my goodness, yeah, I love doing ribs. Favorite author or speaker?
I don't know. I'm torn right now because I'm a big fan of Priscilla Shirer and Crystal Evans Hurst. So these are two
Okay.
sisters. They're Tony Evans' daughters, and I found Crystal Evans Hurst during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and she was doing just a lot of podcast content just for women to, and she's real and transparent.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't over spiritualize things, but she knows her dependence on the Lord, but just
Mm-hmm.
really practical. And Priscilla Shirer has done numerous Bible studies. The Armor of God is my favorite Bible study of all
Mm-hmm.
times, and there were just many times that I had done that. I've done that study probably about 4 times, but every time I walked into the hospital at Children's, I felt suited up and ready for the
Mm-hmm.
fight. And so that
Yes.
was just a good study that practically told me what God had provided for me in order to be able to stand in the midst of this struggle. Struggle
Mm,
called life, struggle called illness, struggle called disease. The Armor of God by Priscilla Shirer was a huge blessing in my life.
that's good. I appreciate you sharing that. That's great. So, last rapid fire question: favorite activity that refreshes your soul?
Right now, it's just walking
Nice.
because I've discovered that there's a lot of things that I can do while I'm walking. I can pray while I'm walking. I can talk to a friend while I'm walking. I can listen to my daily Bible reading plan that I done got behind on and catch up while I'm walking. I can listen to some really good music while I'm walking. And it does not, I've learned that, um, we have tendencies to put so many hard qualifiers on what we do. Like if I'm walking, I need to walk 5 miles. And it's like, no, walk 1 mile. Just walk one
Yeah.
mile, get into the habit of doing that 1 mile, whether you're praying while you're walking, whether you're um, listening to some really good music while you're walking, whether you're catching up with a friend while you're walking. Use that time, and
Mm.
the walking goes by so much faster when you're talking to somebody.
Well, in closing, before I, ask you this one last questions of one last piece of specific advice that you would give to parents that are experiencing hospital life right now, and you've already shared a lot of that. I just want to affirm you, for your walk and for your consistency, that it's been Reagan and I's, humble privilege to see over the years how you've dealt with these diagnoses. You've dealt with these heavy burdens with your spouse, with your parents, with your children. There have been many times that you have probably felt as if you're surrounded. And because of your faith and because of the strength that you have as a woman, like we've been greatly encouraged just to see how you persevere through all of that. And so I just want to say thank you for being a great example for all of us as we've watched your journey.
Well, I just want to give God all the glory, honor, and praise because it is only through Him that I'm able to put one foot in front of the other. So I just want
Hmm.
to acknowledge my Lord and Savior. He is everything to me, and He can be yours.
Amen. So, what's one last piece of advice that you might give to someone who might find themselves in the hospital right now taking care of their child?
You are seen,
Hmm.
you are loved, you are cared for, you are not alone. Even though you
Hmm.
may feel like you are not alone. You're prayed for by strangers who don't even know you. We're
Hmm.
praying for you. We're praying for your children. For those of us who have walked through it, we get it on a level. We don't understand your specific circumstance because everybody's circumstance is different.
That's right.
Please go outside and get a little bit of air, get a little bit of freshness. But please know that you are not alone in your journey. God is there. Even though it's a difficult season, He is with you.
Hmm.
If you don't know Him, please pick up a little scripture and get to know Him because He's got some
Hmm.
richness for you. He loved you first. So please know that He is there for you. Please know that the nurses and doctors are there to support and love your family. Please know that God can and will provide for you for your needs. I know that there are
Mm,
things you might be concerned about financially, just in caring for your child and bills that stack up. You know, you will get through it one day at a
mm.
time. There's a lot of
Couldn't have
help
said
out
it better.
there, and I want you to be encouraged. So,
Mm. Amen, sister. If people hear this interview on the Pressing On podcast and want to follow along with your journey and your story, what's the easiest way to follow you online these days?
probably Facebook.
Okay.
Facebook. I try to put an encouraging message up. I don't do it every single day, but most days
Yeah.
I try to put
Yeah.
a little encouragement up there. And so I work at Reclamation Church in Monroeville, so I am on staff here. So if you're trying to connect with me personally, just call the church because I'm probably going to answer
There
the
you
phone
go.
anyway. So you can reach me at the church. Just tell me you heard me on the podcast and you just need prayed for today. I'm more than happy to do that for you.
Oh, that is so great. Well, Korbin Diggs here on the Pressing On podcast, sharing her family's journey of perseverance. Korbin, we couldn't have said it better just the way that you said it just a moment ago. So, one, thank you for sharing your story. We appreciate you being on the podcast. And for those that are listening, just like Korbin said, know that you're seen, you're loved, you're valued. Keep pressing on today. Take care.
Yes.